Here is something that shouldn't be true. The most watched, most rewatched, most defended characters in fiction history are not the typical heroes. They're not the ones who do the right thing cleanly, who inspire, who win without compromising who they are. The characters people follow obsessively, personally, almost protectively, are the ones who operate in the dark, who cross lines, who carry something broken inside them and keep going anyways. And here's the part that should bother you. The audience knows this. They know these characters aren't safe to root for. They know the methods are questionable. The psychology is damaged. The cost is always too high. But they follow them anyways, not despite the darkness, but because of it. That reaction, that specific, almost irrational devotion to a character who by every reasonable measure should be harder to love than the hero standing next to them, that's what this investigation is about. Not whether these characters are good or evil, but why the darkness is the thing that makes them impossible to look away from, and what that says about every single person watching this right now. Good evening, coming to you from my library, where tonight's case file may leave you with more questions than answers. In his earliest appearances, Batman killed without hesitation. No agonizing, no code, just violence, dealt out in a way any pulp vigilante of that era would deal it. Then something shifted, a rule got written in. Batman no longer kills, and that rule has defined him ever since. Here's what's strange about it. It's never the convenient choice. Fans have argued for decades that the Joker survives encounter after encounter, specifically because Batman won't end it. And every time he doesn't, more people die because of what the Joker does next. By the numbers, the rule produces more harm than breaking it would, but Batman keeps it anyways.
I have one rule.
Oh, then that's the rule you'll have to break to know the truth.
Which is?
The only sensible way to live in this world is without rules. And tonight, you're gonna break your one rule.
Malcolm, nobody else in the entire Gotham Police Department, the DA's office, Arkham Asylum, not one person in this whole damn city can just take him out themselves. Why does it always have to be Batman who should get his hands dirty? That doesn't seem fair.
That's exactly the point. Before we talk about why,
Think about it. They can just poison his food, or take the biggest guys you got and send them in there with some bar soap in socks. Then they beat the Panda Express out of him. No one would think twice about it.
I think you've been ruminating on this way too hard.
Me can't help it. Me just sits here waiting on your next video, man.
We need to talk about what Batman actually is. There are three types of characters operating in this space, and once you see all three clearly, the dark hero stops being a vague feeling and becomes something precise. Let's look at the classic hero first. Superman, Captain America, Avatar Aang. They believe the world can be saved without becoming like the thing they're fighting. Their morality is clean, and their hope is intact, and they inspire. Now let's look at the dark hero. They still want justice. They still have a moral line they won't cross, but experience has made hope difficult. Not impossible, just difficult. They walk into the darkness knowing it might not be okay on the other side, but walk in anyways. Then we have the anti-hero, who is different from both. They may do good, but rarely because they fully believe in it. Their logic is the world is ugly, so I am allowed to be ugly too. They may accidentally protect people, but protection isn't the point.
So basically, the classic hero is your dad. The dark hero is your uncle who came back from the war and never talks about it. And the anti-hero is your cousin who shows up at Christmas, eats all the food, and leaves before the dishes get done. Oh, come on. We all got that cousin, man.
Yeah, you're right about that. Now here's a distinction that really matters. The classic hero does the right thing because they believe in good. The dark hero does the right thing even though they've seen enough evil to stop believing. The anti-hero may do the right thing, but often for the wrong reasons. Those separations live entirely inside the character's psychology, not just their methods, which is why people confuse the dark hero with the anti-hero constantly. Frank Castle's motives may look identical to Batman from the outside. Their origins are similar in tragedy, violence, and darkness, and they operate outside the law. But Batman's darkness is in service of something he's decided cannot be consumed by it. One rule, one line, one proof that the man underneath the armor still exists. Frank's darkness is the mission. There is no line. The reasoning expands to cover whatever he's already decided needs to happen. Now here's what you need to remember. The dark hero has something that cannot be taken away. The anti-hero has run out of things to lose. And here's what that reveals. The dark hero isn't just one thing. They're not black and white. The characters we're going to go over today all share the same architecture. The wound, the moral line, the isolation, the constant threat of becoming the thing they're fighting. But where they sit on that spectrum between the hero, who barely needs the darkness, and the villain who embraces it, that is where people get confused on the label. Let's start with the dark hero archetype you commonly see in fictional stories. We would call this character the weary professional. The character I've chosen for this archetype is someone whose reasoning holds the exact same way Batman does. And watch what happens when the rule itself isn't the problem. Geralt of Rivia is a witcher, a monster hunter created through a brutal alchemical process most children don't survive. He follows a code: stay neutral, don't take sides in human wars, only take the contract and do the job, then move on. Same shape as Batman's rule, a line never crossed. But here's where it starts to cause problems for Geralt. It usually comes back to bite him. Wars he could have influenced, people he cares about, caught in the consequences of neutrality he chose to maintain because the code said so.
If I'm to choose between a greater and lesser evil, I'd rather not choose at all. Usually though, the stakes are just too damn high. Sometimes in choosing a greater evil, you do good, albeit in a small way. When I chose to save the orphans of the swamp, I couldn't know Anna would die, and I never thought the Baron would leave his wife where she lay, find a rope and hang himself.
What the hell, man? Well, at least he got paid. Are we gonna watch the Netflix Witcher next?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Good one.
Batman's line protects who he is. Geralt's line slowly costs him who he has. One of those codes is sustainable. The other has been running on fumes for so long, Geralt has stopped telling the difference between being neutral and being numb. He is a dark hero not because he does terrible things, but because he's done the right thing correctly by the code every time, and has watched the people closest to him absorb the cost of that correctness for years. That is why we would call this archetype the weary professional. Now here's a version of the dark hero whose darkness wasn't a rule they chose. It was a nature, a sign before they ever did anything to deserve it. Al Simmons was a government assassin, killed for a living, but he had a wife worth holding on to. He died, betrayed by the people who employed him, and in the one moment he was offered anything at all, he said yes to the deal. He just wanted to see his wife again. He returned as a hellspawn, something dark, wearing the memory of a man he used to be. Heaven won't take him, and hell already considers him property. And every day he decides they're wrong. He has the power to terrorize, but he doesn't. He protects the people nobody else is coming for, knowing every act of protection costs him power he doesn't have much of, knowing the people he protects would run from him if they knew what he was. A classic hero fights evil because they believe in good. Spawn fights evil while every authority that exists has already decided he is the evil. So we will call this dark hero and other similar characters the cursed vessel. The darkness isn't something he carries, it's something he is. And heroism for him is the daily decision to act against his own nature anyways. Now let's take Ken Kaneki. There was no deal, just an accident. Something was done to him, and leaves him half human and half the exact thing he used to fear. A ghoul's organs was transplanted during emergency surgery, and as a result, he becomes a ghoul. He didn't choose this, and he could have hidden and retreated entirely into the ghoul world, but he doesn't. He keeps trying to protect the people he loves, both humans and ghouls, standing in the space between where nobody else will. But every time he does, he loses a measurable piece of who he was before. Spawn's transformation is finished. One price, paid in full. Kaneki's is ongoing, paid again every time he chooses to be heroic. A classic hero's heroism makes him stronger. Kaneki's makes him less of himself.
Son of a bitch. How many cognitive sacks does this guy have?
So Spawn got cursed by hell, and Kaneki got cursed by medical malpractice?
Well, that's not exactly...
No. Me understand perfectly. Me dated a woman like that once. Beautiful, dangerous, eyes like moonlight over a cemetery.
tombs.
Next thing me know, she sucks the marrow out me neck, steals me wallet, then leaves me waking up 3 days later, craving raw meat and emotional validation. So believe me, Winston, me understand Kaneki completely.
We could have omitted a lot of that information. We would call Kaneki of the Dark Hero the burden bearer. One debt has a bottom, the other doesn't. Both of them keep paying anyways. And here's an important distinction we need to remember about this archetype, the Dark Hero. The world a Dark Hero inhabits is never incidental. It's load-bearing. A classic hero can exist in a bright world because their goodness doesn't need to be tested by darkness to prove itself. It's simply assumed. The Dark Hero requires the opposite. Gotham and Tokyo has been rotting, corrupt, beyond the reach of ordinary justice, or Batman and Kaneki's methods would have no justification. The continent has to be a place where kings start wars over pride and witches curse children out of spite, or Geralt's neutrality has no weight. The world isn't the backdrop, it's the argument for why this particular kind of broken person has to exist in the first place. Two left, and the next one almost doesn't belong on this list. Itachi Uchiha killed his entire clan in a single night, including his own parents. The reason? To stop a coup that would have plunged the village into civil war. He spared one person, his 7-year-old brother Sasuke, and never told him why. He let Sasuke believe it was ambition and had built years of hatred around a lie, rather than a truth that might have been even harder to carry. That's the massacre. What most people skip is everything that comes after. He spent years embedded inside the Akatsuki, a terrorist organization responsible for atrocities across the ninja world. He made a deal: stay inside, keep watch, and if they ever moved against his home, he'd burn it down from within. He befriended people in that organization, lived among monsters, performing the role of one himself for years, all while publicly branded the man who slaughtered his family for sport. He can never correct the record, never go home. And here's why that should unsettle you. Nobody is even certain it worked. That's the real debate over whether those years actually protected the Leaf Village, or whether his sacrificed everything for a strategy that may not have changed anything. He doesn't know either, but he made the sacrifice anyways, without confirmation, without anyone telling him it mattered.
Lord have mercy. Who needs enemies when you have family like that?
Here's why Itachi sits where he does. He wiped out his own clan to prevent a war, then spent years undercover inside a terrorist organization to protect the village from within. Both choices made alone, both unverifiable, both carried out knowing the world would remember him as a monster. He could have explained himself, but he didn't. He let the village brand him a traitor and a mass murderer, and accepted that reputation as part of the cost. That's the calculation that earns him this spot. Now, if you asked Itachi if he considers himself a hero, he wouldn't. He'd say he made a choice, and heroism was never the point. Survival was, for as many people as that math allowed. So, we would call a character similar to Itachi the silent sacrifice. He is the furthest point on the spectrum for the Dark Hero, not because his reasoning broke, but because it never needed heroism to hold. You can argue him as a villain or acknowledge his intentions. Batman sits close enough to the classic hero that the weight he carries is the only thing marking him as dark. Itachi sits close enough to the villain that the only thing keeping him on this side is a reason that holds. If Batman knew what Itachi did, he'd understand the reasoning, and yet he still couldn't look him in the eye. Because Batman believes there's always another way, even if it costs him his life. Itachi made a different calculation, and that distance between two men whose reasoning both held is the entire investigation into this archetype. Now the last one, and perhaps the strangest, Walter Kovacs, Rorschach, didn't start with a tragedy. He started with a story. A woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment in 1964. The papers reported almost 40 neighbors heard the attack and not one called for help. Rorschach read the story and decided permanently that the social contract was a lie. Here's what the story knows that Rorschach may never have. The 40 witnesses were a myth. The real number was far smaller. 2 people called the police and a woman held Kitty Genovese while she died. If he ever learned the truth, we were never told, which means that the absolute certainty he carries may be standing on foundations shakier than he believes. But Rorschach is a man of no compromise, no gray zones, and no mercy, regardless of the circumstance. And yet, when the moment comes, when compromising would save millions, he doesn't bend. Not because he's certain he's right, but because the thing he cannot survive is being the kind of person who bends. Batman's rule protects Gotham. Geralt's code protects his profession. Itachi's sacrifice protects his village. Spawn and Kaneki's darkness points outward. But Rorschach's code primarily protects Rorschach. No compromise is what keeps Walter Kovacs from having to examine Walter Kovacs. The mask isn't just a disguise, it's the only version of himself he trusts. So we would call this archetype the reluctant enforcer.
Never compromise, not even in the face of Armageddon.
So we have 6 characters, 6 relationships with darkness, none of them clean, none of them simple. And here's why the audience loves them. Not because darkness is aspirational, because Dark Heroes answers a question a classic hero doesn't ask. What happens to goodness when the world is genuinely cruel to it? The classic hero says goodness persists regardless. The Dark Hero says it persists, but it costs you something real. And you carry that cost, and you keep going anyways. That second answer feels true, not inspiring. The people who love this archetype most aren't drawn to the darkness. They're drawn to the persistence, the stubborn refusal to stop, even when the cost keeps being asked for again, even when nobody is watching. That's not a fictional concept. That's something a specific kind of person understands from the inside and recognizes on screen before they can name what they're recognizing.
So which one am I, Winston?
What do you mean?
Batman got billions. Geralt got swords. Spawn got chains. Me get nobody, no benefits, and a YouTube channel fighting for its life. So me think we invent a new one, man. The unpaid sidekick.
If you've made it this far in the video, tell me in the comments. Do you agree with this list? Is there a character you thought of that I missed? Because if this investigation did its job, you already know exactly where they'd sit on the spectrum, and you probably know which one you'd be too. But these are just my observations. If you found something worth thinking about here, consider subscribing. Or you can support Toon's unpaid commentary in the link in the description. Until we meet again, my library will remain open.